Good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, June 9th. I'm Dave Weisberger, the CEO of CoinRoutes. It's time for our This Week in Crypto Roundup. And to be honest, I'm pretty mad today. I'm going to try to keep it calm, but at the end of the day, what we've seen this week is nothing short of an attempt by a few individuals to derail the American dream, literally to stop innovation in its tracks for no reason other than protecting their cronies in businesses that they think deserves protection. What makes it worse is they're cloaking it in the guise of consumer protection. So let's talk about the markets first. It's pretty boring. Bitcoin down maybe 2.5%, Ether down like around 2.5% over the week. Equity markets slightly down, depending on what you are. Some of them are slightly up, but basically boring. During the week, when the Binance news was announced, and we'll talk about that in a heartbeat, the crypto market sold off hard between 7 and 10%. When the Coinbase news was announced and the market digested it, it rallied back to where we're almost flat on the week. So let's talk about what has actually transpired. And I want to be extremely clear that there are two cases here. One, I will have very little comment about. The other, a lot of commentary. So as far as Binance is concerned, many of the allegations in the brief or in the filing were quite troubling. There's no question about it. Commingled funds, questions of what they did to previous CEOs, arguments about whether or not Binance actually did let Binance US run themselves separately. All of those things, since they were represented as being separate, are very troubling. And frankly, it deserves investigation. The only problem I have with the tale of Binance right now is something called due process. Now you might ask, what's due process? The answer is it's part of the Bill of Rights, and it's an extraordinarily important one. It is what codifies the idea of innocent until proven guilty, people. That's what it does. But what has happened here is before they get granted a restraining order against Binance US, the feds have sicked their banks upon Binance and effectively cut them out of the financial system, rendering them DOA. Think about the implication. If the federal government, and not all three branches of the federal government, not the legislature and the administrative and judicial branch working together, but the administrative branch with unelected bureaucrats can use their power to cut off a business from the financial system without any due process, with nothing in court, just on the basis of allegations. What is to stop a future administration from cutting any of you from the financial system if they don't like you, if you're a political opponent? And before you say, that can't be, our government won't target political opponents, well, look at the news today. I don't want to talk about he who shall not be named, but just imagine, if you will, a Trump administration that wins in 2024. Hopefully not, but anything can happen, but wins in 2024 and now has the legal precedent to cut off any opponent from their financial system by simply using the massive regulatory power of the administration to tell the banks, we don't like them, don't do business. That is not a precedent we can allow to stand. That is a precedent that people who are for economic freedom need to fight about. So while the Binance allegations are serious, deserve to be fleshed out, there needs to be a day in court, and we'll see whether the DOJ makes anything on the criminal side. The fact is, due process still matters. Which now brings me to the second case, Coinbase. Now, the Coinbase case is fascinating because the SEC has tied themselves in the knots here. Coinbase has many lines of defense on this case, but the first one is actually kind of amusing. The first one is, well, the SEC approved our S1. Therefore, they shouldn't be attacking us now because they're going to harm all the investors that they let get invested. Now, on its face, that's a terrible argument for a bunch of reasons. Not notably, in the S1 itself, Coinbase disclosed that one of our problems might be things we're trading could be called securities and we could have a legal. So they disclosed that fact. And the SEC said, well, okay, they disclose it, allow it. So the SEC's defense to this argument was pretty simple. It's in the S1. We don't take an opinion. We never take an opinion about investments. Oops. Except for they have. They've been repeatedly warning investors about the excessive risk of crypto, despite the math saying that Bitcoin and Ether have had no more volatility than Tesla or other stocks of similar size. Gary Gensler, in multiple interviews this week, effectively said there's no need for crypto. Various delegates of his in media have said there's no reason for any of this. So, unfortunately, the SEC has taken a side. They have said something. And if they really believe those things, then they should never have allowed the S1 to go forward. But they did. But in any event, whether or not that defense is, the real question is the claim that's repeatedly been made about you can come in and register is such a bunch of unadulterated bullshit that it really deserves to be prosecuted for fraud or fraudulent misrepresentation of statements. Because the reality is that the SEC believes that most of the, quote, tokens traded by Coinbase are securities. And therefore, by definition, because there's no ability for token listers to actually make those as registered securities and still exist, that any crypto exchange is a platform that is out of compliance, meaning Coinbase, Kraken, Bitstamp, Crosstower, Itbit, Gemini, all of them face the exact same thing that Coinbase faces. It means the death of crypto in the United States is what it means. But let's dig into why. Because I find it amusing when I see people like John Reed Stark, who in a Twitter space has said, but the laws say you could register as a security and then you could trade them. Well, let's analyze that. First, let's look at could the issuers, could Solana, could Polkadot, could any of these people have registered as securities? Well, considering that the tokens themselves were created basically for one reason, it was created to provide incentives to grow the network. Those incentives for developers who work on the network, for users of the network, for participants in the network or value-added contributors to the networks, are all used to be incentivized via tokens. Can that work? Well, no is the answer. And there's no for two reasons. Reason number one is the forums themselves don't have spaces for distributed autonomous organizations. They don't have space, the ability to even proceed in a filing without giving multiple years of financials that don't exist for these tokens. Remember, they're being used to bootstrap networks and be financial innovation. They don't even have space for you to be able to say we have this without providing a board of directors and a corporate structure that literally doesn't exist for these tokens. So the rules need to change. But even worse than that, those same rules do not have a space for the put tokenomics. There's no way to understand, is there a monetary policy? Is there a scarcity schedule? Are there rules in the code that will allow people to be confident of what this token will be worth based on any rational metric? Well, there might be those sorts of things, but there's no space on the SEC website or forums to put any of that. So they're useless. But the second problem, and this is the one that is actually the big one, is we live in a world with something called the accredited investor rule. And accredited is shorthand for rich. Here's the problem. If you're not an accredited investor, you are not allowed to buy or sell any security until it is seasoned or until it is listed and gets to a national securities exchange in an IPO. So what does that mean? Well, that means if you're bootstrapping a network, virtually none of the developers are accredited, virtually none of the users are accredited, and therefore you cannot do anything. You can't use it. And considering the fact that there's no way to distinguish in a crypto platform between accredited or non-accredited investors, there's literally no way even to control it. So the fact is, because of that, the people in the cryptoverse have decided correctly that being called a security is a death sentence to token projects because they literally cannot register. And if they did, it would be unworkable for the innovation that they're trying to do. Think about what that means. That means that these people have all gone through all sorts of machinations to try to make what they're doing non-securities. Now, they may not be equities because they don't have a profit participation or ownership in the business. They're not debt. They don't have either a fixed coupon or a liquidation preference like a preferred share might have. But they generally have some sort of rights within the network, whether it be governance rights or scarcity use rights for discounts like some tokens, etc. But those rights have to be different. Do they pass the Howey test? Maybe, maybe not. Not a lawyer, don't care. But what they don't do is they don't fit the model of the rules that we have. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with a situation where if you enforce rules that were literally written before computers on listing standards and have been updated nowhere near long before the internet, long before blockchain technology. If you don't update those rules, we will never have progress in a regulated environment. But let's be clear. CoinRoute's position on the Coinbase case is simple. We believe that regulation done based on principles, and I've talked about this many times on this channel, is a very good idea. But let's explain the difference. So, if, as Gary Gensler has repeatedly said, the goal of the SEC is to protect investors, and I believe that he believes that. And if we know that there's been a lot of fraud in the crypto space, certainly a lot of misleading marketing, a lot of advertisements of guaranteed returns, a lot of things that we think should not happen, then should the SEC be looking to prosecute the people who are providing misleading statements, the people who have led to rug pulls for investors? Or should they be prosecuting one of the only organizations that has attempted to set up a process to decide what should be listed and what shouldn't, and is trying to follow rules? An organization who no fewer than 30, that's 30 times, has attempted to meet with the SEC to get clarity on how best to enforce that sort of regulation. Or should they be attacking the various rug pulls in meme coins and other coins that don't really have any existence, or pump and dump schemes that are out there on Telegram or out there on Twitter DMs or out there for the world to see? Well, clearly they choose to go after Coinbase. And the cynical part of me knows why. It's because they can pay a bigger fine. With the others, all they can do is stop them from harming investors. Where's the fun in that? But truthfully, it's even worse than that. Because if you think about what they're trying to achieve, is they are doing something very interesting. By attempting to ban an entire industry, they are going to make it do one of two things. They're going to push it offshore or push it underground. In either case, investors are directly harmed, not helped. Because the core belief of my core belief, and the core belief of many in our industry, is that the entire financial market will eventually adopt digital technology. Trading pairwise, on-demand settlement, bearer instruments, multi-currency, 24/7. Those are the hallmarks of a much more efficient market with far less rent-seeking than the current banking and exchange oligopoly. If you believe that, as most do, then you understand what's at stake for the US. What is at stake is simple. Imagine in 2001, in the aftermath of the internet bubble, which created dramatically more harm than anything that we've seen in the cryptoverse. If the US authorities said, let's regulate all of these people because the internet needs to be controlled for speech. It needs to be controlled for commerce. We can't allow them to act and to cut out middlemen. We can't do that because look at all the people who were harmed. Google would never have developed in the United States. It would have been offshore. Amazon would have moved offshore. Facebook would not have developed in the United States. It would have had to have been offshore. Trillions of GDP could have been lost. Imagine going back further, if when Henry Ford started the assembly line and people started getting cars, if rules that were meant to be enforced against horses were enforced against cars. The automotive industry would never have developed in the United States, or anywhere for that matter, that did that, something that dumb. But that is literally what they're trying to do with crypto. But there's hope. As I said last week at the end of my show, the fact is an unprecedented thing occurred. The Congress, both the Agriculture Committee and the Finance Committee, got together and said, hey, we should do something to make and applaud and encourage innovation in crypto while at the same time protecting investors. And so a 168-page framework was created, which started with an interesting premise: do not regulate by enforcement. Think about that. And imagine what happened inside a certain senator's office when she read that. Do you not believe that the first call was a speed dial to the SEC saying, do something? We can't allow this to be the narrative that people are talking about. And if you don't believe that that is why the Binance case was filed hurriedly over the weekend and the Coinbase case hurriedly after that, then there's a bridge that my old apartment in New York used to look over that I would love to sell you. The fact is, they push these things out too fast. In fact, we can see it because the Coinbase filing and the Binance filing have different lists of tokens they deem securities. They didn't even bother to reconcile them. That's not something that the normally careful SEC would have done. So these things were rushed out. But unfortunately, they've been pretty successful. The narrative has shifted to the SEC's overreach away from the Congress. And at least one Democrat, God bless him, Richie Torres from the Bronx, has called them on it and said they should be held in contempt of Congress for doing exactly that, for going against the wishes of a congressional committee. Thankfully, there's a Supreme Court doctrine called the major decision doctrine, which is going to use all of this. And if I were the people at the SEC who expect to have to litigate these things, I know that I'm facing an incredible uphill battle to win, at least against Coinbase. In Binance, if they can prove criminal misconduct or fraud, they're going to win, or at least force them into a settlement. And that would be the right thing. That would be a good thing. Let's be clear about that. But with Coinbase, who has tried in good faith to both register and be compliant, they will not win because there are no rules. It is horse regulations being applied to automobiles, or in this case, maybe horse regulations being applied to jets. And that is really important because ultimately the future of United States financial markets is at risk. I'll leave you with one thought. As Binance US has been going through its death rattles, we've been studying the example of what's gone on at CoinRoutes. We study the market all the time, and it is overwhelming what has happened. For periods of time during this week, Binance US's prices for Bitcoin and Ether were over 5% divergent from other markets. That is direct harm to people on Binance's platform who were innocent of anything, and their only crime was, quote, believing that a business which was legitimate in the United States could be used. Now, maybe people who on that platform will end up losing money because the government will bankrupt them and stand in line in front of them as a creditor. But it's very, very unlikely, and there's zero proof so far, that Binance US customers would have lost a dime had the SEC not done this. And that's going to have to be the acid test, because fraud or no fraud, the investors should come first. And that is something that matters. So if the SEC wins their temporary restraining order and can prove that investors are at risk, then kudos to them. And that's the right way. It should have been done in secret. It should have been sealed. And no one should have known about it because the damage is done once they filed it. But they should have been able to proceed. But by making it out publicly, because I think they wanted to take over the narrative, they've done irreparable harm to that business and effectively cutting it off from the financial system. They have also harmed the investors and traders on Binance's platform. And that is problematic to me. But we'll stop there as far as that's concerned. The last thing that I think is worth talking about is a very important question. Multiple times this week, I've heard proponents of the SEC make the statement: if something can't be done legally, you shouldn't do it. You should act to change the law. I want everyone listening to think about what that means. What that means is, in the United States, we should not be allowed to innovate until we can get a congressional bill passed through the House, the Senate, and signed by the president to authorize the ability to do what they're doing. Think about what that standard means to innovation in the information economy. Think about what that standard means to the American way of life. And if that is a world you want to live in, I could tell you it's not the one I want to live in. Because what America was founded upon is free enterprise. What we have now is crony capitalism. What we have now are weaponized regulators. And this is a war that needs to be fought. I was proud reading Brian Armstrong's statements, whether or not you end up agreeing with what Coinbase has done or not. His statement of doing what is essentially a public good for the industry is impressive. There have been multiple other CEOs who have taken a stand. And I think it's really important that we do too. CoinRoute stands for principles-based regulation. We believe in fiduciary duties. We believe in best execution. We believe in protecting customer assets. We believe in full, fair, and accurate disclosures. We believe that false marketing and fraud should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. All of those things are true. But what we don't believe in is crushing innovation for the sake of enforcing decades-old regulations that don't apply. With that, I will leave you to your weekend. Here we are in sunny Miami. I hope it's nice wherever you are. Take care and stay safe out there.